Hi, I'm Matthew Quilliam. In this video we're going to look at why and how you might want to go about reading sheet music as a ukulele player. Reading sheet music is an often controversial topic. I see a lot of ukulele circles avoiding reading sheet music. Whilst other instruments have no alternative than to use notation as their form of reading, I see lots of ukulele players deliberately avoiding it in preference of tab or song sheets or any other method because they fear its intricacies and complexities as a form of writing music. While there's nothing wrong with reading tab or learning orally, I do believe there are major advantages if you can read music. And so in this video I'm going to explore the many reasons why you shouldn't be afraid of it, the many ways how you can use sheet music, and of course how to actually read the notes in the first place. For a beginner, the process of learning to read sheet music can really be intimidating and scary. I should know, I was there once. However, once you start learning all about notation, you will really quickly pick it up and notice that it isn't as scary and as complicated as you might think it is. This is due in part to all the clearly defined rules and strict guidelines and limitations that notation has. Therefore, when you learn just a couple of rules, you unlock the potential to be able to read lots of music in any style. Its key strengths are exploring rhythmic, harmonic and melodic accuracy that you just don't get with any other musical notation format. A lot of players and ensembles use song sheets. This is where you have the words, the lyrics of the songs, and then just some chords written above. However, I find these can often be quite inaccurate. If you're familiar with the song, then you might get on with them. But for someone who's never heard the song before, reading just from these song sheets can be... they don't get enough information across, just the chords and the lyrics. They don't actually sort of describe how they fit in rhythmically. This is where lead sheets come in. You don't have to have big, complicated scores. You can just have a melody, some lyrics, and some chords at the top. This is essentially like a musical grid. Everything is laid out in the same sort of grid. You've got a 4x4 grid here. You've got 4 bars in each line, and the chords are correspond to each beat, which means that you can get really precise information from just not a lot of ink on the page that will massively improve your ability to play a song from just reading. For example, as you can see in this song, each bar has a different number of chords within it. So for example, this bar just has this one F chord that starts on the first beat, whereas this bar has 2 chords. And as you can see, the first one is on beat 1, and the second one comes in on beat 3. Furthermore, we've got some more complicated lines where we've got 2 bars that have 2 chords each. And this is something that you can just see in an instant from sheet music that you don't get from simple song sheets. If each bar is just 4 strums, then you can count to see how many strums you need to have on a chord before you have to change the chord. So for example, this bar with 2 chords, you have 2 strums on each if there are 4 in total within the bar. Whereas this one, all 4 of the strums of the bar belong to the single chord that appears within it. This is different to the use of song sheets. With lead sheets, you can simply rely on the beat and how many strums you've done to determine when you have to change chord. This is different to song sheets, where you just have to sort of rely on the words, and of course words can have different lengths and pronunciations and all sorts of complicated linguistical challenges that make it harder to follow than lead sheets. As you can see from this example, the song sheet does not give any indication as to the length of a particular chord. This chord initially appears to carry on much longer than the following chord, but it's just a trick of the way it's written. As you can see from the same song's lead sheet, both chords actually exist for the same length of time. It's just that the second chord has fewer words than the first. On the song sheet, it appears as if the first chord is much longer because there are more words there, and it looks as if the chord lasts for longer than it does. Hence, I would argue that lead sheets are a more accurate way of keeping rhythm and time compared to song sheets that are misleading. This is especially true in ensemble settings, where some people do know the song, but others don't know how it goes, and so there is a greater risk of confusion between band members. Something else you shouldn't forget is that for the vast majority of other instruments, notation is the only way of writing music and reading as well. Ukulelists and guitarists, lute players, whatever, they can use tab and that's fine, but if we want some more inclusivity, then we really need to be able to read sheet music. If everyone could read from the same page, then it would lead to a lot more collaboration and inclusivity with the uke and other instruments. So those are some of the reasons that you might consider wanting to learn notation. Now for the rest of the video we're going to look at how to actually read sheet music. One thing I must say though, before we go into the how of it, is that in order to effectively read music you need to know where the notes are on the fretboard. You don't need to have everyone memorised, but it does help having lots of reference points. Even if you just learn where the dots are, I've got dots on the side of my uke. So even if you know what the notes on the dots are, say on the A string, first dot on the 3rd fret is C, then D, E, next one's G, then A. Even just knowing those notes gives you a reference point, because of course you can't look at sheet music and your ukulele at the same time, unless you're an alien of course. So you need to be able to have that muscle memory of knowing where the notes are without having to look at your uke. You can focus on the sheet music for the time being. If you haven't learnt the notes yet, then do subscribe, because I'll be doing another video in the very near future all about memorising the fretboard. Subscribe so you don't miss out. If you've seen the video already or you do know your fretboard, then let's get on to how to actually read music. Okay, so reading music is fairly simple. We have the 5 lines known as the stave, and each line represents a note, as do the spaces in between. We can have notes above or below the stave too. These are called ledger lines. Think of the notes that exist on the stave as the main or the most useful notes that you're most likely to encounter, and the ledger lines are the extra ones that you might need on occasion and that you have to reach on special occasions, but for the most part you don't need to include them. That said, we still don't know what each note in each space and line is, so this is where clefs come in. A clef is a symbol found right at the start of a piece or a page that tells you which notes go where. The reason we have different clefs is that different instruments play different notes to each other. A bass guitar is going to have a significantly lower range than the ukulele. A ukulele, with its high-pitched sound, would use a treble clef. So if the bass guitar tried to use the treble clef, then it would be impossible to notate without using all of these ledger lines that make it impossibly hard to read, making the page messy and unneat. Therefore, a bass player needs their own clef, and so they use the bass clef, which puts all of the same notes that were previously on the ledger lines onto the main stave, so that it's easier to read. There are lots of clefs, but as ukulele players, the only one we really need to worry about is the treble. Therefore, since we're using the treble clef, the notes on the stave are as follows. A way to remember all the lines is the fact that the acronym EGBDF, it stands for Every Good Boy Deserves Football. You'll find loads of different phrases on how to remember the notes. In fact, why don't you make up your own? Leave your suggestions in the comments below. Similarly, the spaces spell the word face. The notes on the ukulele that we can cover, therefore, on just the stave range, go from the open E string all the way up to the 8th fret on the A string. If we want to go lower or higher, then we need to add the ledger lines. The lowest note a typical ukulele can play is the low C, or middle C. This is represented on the treble clef as just one ledger line underneath the stave, which isn't too difficult to remember because it's only one line. The amount of frets you have on a ukulele will depend on how many ledger lines you can achieve above the stave, but most sopranos with just 12 frets can't go any higher than one ledger line above to a high A, so that's really easy to remember as well. Okay, so we have our notes. We can write them out like this, but that's a lot of notes. It's hard to break down into small chunks to make it easily digestible. To help us do this, we create time signatures and bars. Bars are groups of notes that break up sections of music into easily understandable bits. Every single bar lasts exactly the same amount of time, and the time signature is what tells us how long each one is. You will see 2 numbers, one stacked on top of each other. The bottom number tells us the type of the note, and the top one tells us how many of that note fit into a bar. So the most common time signature, 4/4, tells us that there are 4 quarter notes. A bar can be easily divided into 4 mediumly long notes without a problem. It can be divided into smaller chunks too, such as 8 eighth notes. However, only every other eighth note will be played on a beat. So 2 eighth notes fit into the space of 1 quarter note. You can keep dividing by 2 to get infinitely smaller and quicker notes, or longer and slower notes. However, if your notes were happening so quickly, it's really hard to read. What musicians might do instead is that they would double the speed of the music, but write the notes to last twice as long. You can use a 2/2 time signature, now indicating that you have 2 half notes rather than 4 quarter notes. You can fit the same amount of notes into the bar, but the beat will be felt half as regularly. Put all that together and you get something that looks like this. These 2 melodies sound exactly the same, though they are written completely differently, because we need the music to be written in a size and pace that we can process quickly enough to play in real time. Each note is written with a different shape and colour to represent length. In England we use Latin names such as quaver and minim, but seemingly the rest of the world uses mathematics like quarter note, half note, whole note, etc. In fact, that's what I'm using in this video, as it's so much more clear to understand. I would read all the names out to you, but this video is getting long enough already, and you can pretty much learn the names of things in your own time. So I'll put a link in the description to a chart where you can learn all the names and note values for yourself. One thing you might have noticed is that we don't have any sharp or flat notes. We just have natural notes, or the white keys on a piano. These notes can be created through accidentals that look like this. We put one of them before a dot to raise or lower it by a semitone, creating a black note, or the note between notes. Likewise, if you have a sharp or flat note that you want to become natural again, you can include the natural accidental. Accidentals reset after 1 bar is finished. Quite commonly, you'll see a bunch of accidentals right at the start of the piece. These are called key signatures. Every key is assigned its own set of accidentals. Therefore, if you encounter a note that's on one of the lines or spaces that has an accidental right at the start, then you know it's automatically a sharp or flat. This saves having to write out an accidental for each and every occurrence of this note throughout the entire piece. Not only does this make the page look neater, but when these systems were being invented, when ink was quite expensive and rare, then it helped people save on the ink and write music more concisely. Finally, the last thing to really consider when reading music is the overall direction. Play a little connect the dots game in your head to see if a melody is going upwards, downwards, or generally motionless, rather than looking at each note individually. This will help your reading and processing, allowing you to notice patterns and predict where a melody might go next without having to really think about the specific notes that you're playing. And there we are. That's the end of my sort of crash course on reading notation. Reading music is like learning the ukulele itself. Of course, when you begin, there's lots of things to think about. Your position of each individual hand and your posture, learning all the different chords and the strumming patterns. You've all got to sort of think of it at once, and that can be quite overwhelming for a beginner. But it quickly becomes second nature, and this motion you don't even think about after you've been playing for only a few weeks. It's the same with notation. You've got all those things to think about at once, but once you start getting into it, then you realise how easy it is, and you'll really get into the groove, and reading music will just become second nature within no time at all. You'll be able to play music with other musicians and instrumentalists, as well as have a greater understanding of wider musical theories. So as I say, don't be put off by my info dump. It is a lot to take in, but you are at the same stage when you first picked up your ukulele, and look how far you've come already, even if you've only been playing a few months or weeks. Like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and so you can go on and do your own research, look at some music reading, sight reading things. I might even do a few videos where we look at a sort of more in-depth reading sheet music for any ukulele players who would like to acquire this skill, but who have been brought up to use sort of more colloquial methods of reading music. I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and press the bell next to it to get notified of when I release new videos. I release tutorial and theory videos like this one every Monday, as well as performance videos on a Wednesday and bonus content on a Friday. There really is no reason why you wouldn't want to subscribe, as there's something for everyone here. If you'd like to support me further, please consider joining the Patreon, the links are in the description, or leaving me a financial tip. In these strange times, of course, we've got no gigs happening, so I do appreciate all the support that you can give me in these strange times. Finally, go ahead and like the Matthew Quilliam Music Facebook page and join the group as well, and head over to www.matthewquilliam.co.uk for all my latest information on gigs and workshops. I hope this video has been useful to you. If it has, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.